Okay, y'all, I'm coming at you with one. I'm coming at you with Marineford if Kaido shows up. Now, this could play out many ways. So, the first way, Kaido shows up, right? And he's shooting down the platform as soon as he gets there. Boom! Like, Whitebeard shows up and Kaido shows up and he destroys the platform. Boom! Akainu sees this and Akainu goes after Kaido and they're fighting. With that out the way, things play out kind of similarly. Whitebeard shows up, right? Whitebeard has his people, has Marco. Marco fights against Kizaru, and Joseph fights against Aokiji. The warlords try to do their thing. Garf and Sengoku are worried about Kaido's presence, right? But they know Akainu is handling that. They know that they have a man um there already, right? They know that they have somebody on the job handling that side of things, or managing it however they can. And when it comes to managing that, Kaido is managing Akainu, right? He's fucking him up, But Akainu's still getting some good hits in on him, right? Because we gotta remember the Magu Magu no Mi isn't something to sleep upon, right? That's the most powerful, offensively capable Devil Fruit. And we got Whitebeard running around, doing his thing. Now Ace is already, basically freed. He just needs out of his cuffs. Sengoku's there. Luffy has to fight against Sengoku for a little bit. Whitebeard gets to fight against, Sengoku. Garp gets dismissed by Luffy. That is serious, like y'all, but it's like, kind of how it was the last time. Ace is free. Boom. Everybody's like, whatever happened, why are they, why is he free? And they're running, they're running, they're running, they're running. Whitebeard's fighting against, him, right? But then he hits, Sengoku really hard, like, boom! Sengoku being the weaker of the two. He's like, let's get back to the ship. And they get back to the ship and they get going, right? So then, Shanks shows up and Kaido's like, I've had my fill. It's not like one of those things where Kaido's like trying to, press shit. He actually clashes with Shanks. Akainu is basically out. Akainu's like out. Like his eyes roll back in his head and he's out. Um, and then, Whitebeard was gone, so Blackbeard's like, damn, excuse me. He's like trying to like, be like, what the fuck? You know, um, he still has a skirmish with the Marines and shit, but the Marines is still like, this guy's still a fucking issue. We can't use our devil fruit powers on them. They just basically, they retreat. So now there's another scenario where when Kaido shows up, he destroys the platform. Whitebeard plans on destroying the platform. So Whitebeard still, does what he does, right? Boom, cracks the sky, and then the tsunamis come. Boom. Aokiji freezes the water. Boom, frozen. Then, after that, after that happens, Kaido appears and boom, he shoots that in his dragon form, right? He uses that blast breath and takes care of the platform. Garp gets on the move, and Garp's fighting against Kaido now. Akainu is free now, free to fight against Whitebeard. Whitebeard's fighting against Akainu as the fight progresses, or as this war progresses. Luffy shows up, but when Luffy shows up, he's already where Ace is at, right? Because he sees him as he's falling, and he grabs Ace as he's falling. Boom. And Garp and Garp fighting against um, Kaido, right? Luffy's fighting against Sengoku, you know, for a little bit. Whitebeard offers support, because he actually, managed to get Akainu. He hits Akainu really hard, right? But Akainu's still, trying to find Whitebeard. Now, Akainu knows what they were all brought here to do. Sengoku does too, and they're like, he needs to be killed still. So he's after Ace. Luffy and Ace are running, and then Whitebeard steps in the way. Boom! He takes the attack to the chest, and then they're like, "Oh shit!" Kaido and Garp have a Conquer's hockey clash after fighting for a little bit. Not at the initial attack. The initial attack that Garp used to attack Kaido with was like Galaxy Divide or some shit like that, right? So Kaido felt that, but he didn't feel the next one, right? Because Kaido actually won that exchange. Boom. So now Garp is, sitting down somewhere. Sengoku, Sengoku's like, he's looking around and he's like, we might lose this shit. We might lose this shit. And Akai's like, no, 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 we are not losing this shit. And he's all fucked up and shit, and he's trying to fight Whitebeard. And he actually, he's screaming and shit, and it's actually Kizaru that gets some hits on Ace. Boom. He shoots him, not full of holes like that, like in a way that kills him, but he shoots, a hole through his arm, a hole through his, shoulder. Boom, not killing him, but injuring him pretty bad, right? And Luffy's like, damn, you gotta get out of here. We cannot fight these guys. And they are running away and shit, right? And then Blackbeard shows up. Boom. Now that Blackbeard shows up this time, Whitebeard and Akainu are fighting each other. But, you know, see, what did I say? I said, Garp was taken care of, right? Kaido bodies, Akainu. Boom! Hits him with the Bagua, and he's out, right? Because he gets blindsided by it. So now he has an option to fuck around and do that, or what. Whitebeard said, I'm trying to get out of here, and he's like, I'll fight these Marines. But when Kaido's fighting the Marines, because he's fighting all these fodder people, and he's trying to battle against Sengoku and shit, right? And the other admirals too. But he's still, but he's still, sweating a little bit. But he's like, I can help an old friend out, I guess. And Whitebeard gets taken, and then Blackbeard has two devil fruits. And he's like, you want to try this shit, Kaido? And Kaido's like, sure. And they, clash. And when they clash, Kaido's kind of impressed that this guy's, doing that shit. But then, Sengoku jumps and he's like, ha, boom, and he hits Blackbeard on the side. The side, and he's like, oh shit. I still take some damage shit from you guys, but hey man, I have two devil fruits now. Now, Luffy and Ace did get away in this scenario too. But Shanks shows up, right? So Shanks shows up, and when Shanks shows up, Blackbeard don't want the smoke. He slides Kaido some sake and says, cool, you cannot be here no more. The world has already seen shit destroyed. And another thing too, y'all, this island is this. Oh shit. So the Marineford, the island of Marineford is now in pieces. Um, when I say in pieces, I mean the island was basically split into like two halves. All right, it got cut in half by all the destruction from Whitebeard, Sengoku, and mostly Kaido and Whitebeard's devil fruits caused the island to split into two. Boom. And so when Shanks arrived, he was like, "What the?" Mm? Then because he understands how the world perceives shit, right? And he's like, "Oh my God, they see the shit. They think that the Marines are fucking weak, and and all this other stuff. You guys cannot be fighting each other no more. You gotta stop. He told Kaido to like chill the fuck out and go home by throwing him some sake. And then Blackbeard, he's like, "Yo, we might have that shit, but I don't think you want to do shit with us, right?" And he's like, "Yeah." And they go their separate ways. Um, and then Whitebeard still dies, but Ace gets away. Um, so I do think in that scenario that Ace gets away. Um, Akainu's the type of guy who likes to fight, right? Strong pirates. Um, in the midst of these battles and shit, he like realizes that he should go after Ace, but by that time he's already getting thrown around by Kaido or Whitebeard. Um, in the scenario where Garp attacks, right? Garp's not really trying to, stop Ace or uh, allow Ace to get executed, but he understands his job. So the reason he's fighting in that scenario is because he has to protect Marineford. That's who he is as a Marine. He's not fighting to because Ace or anything. He just like because he kind of understands what Shanks knows a little bit, and he's like, Marineford needs to stand. No matter what happens today, this island needs to be, still standing kind of shit. Not like how it ends up being. Either in either scenario though, the island is destroyed, bro. Like this shit's, the island is basically, destroyed, broken into pieces. Either in half or in thirds or something, man. Because the power of both of those devil fruits coming in against the Marines. Yeah, man, they didn't give a fuck about that. Um, but yeah, that's what I think about Kaido pulling up to Marineford. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. And be cool, call on the corner.